Is everything at Five Below really under $5? Well, upon entering the store, I was immediately met with signs that proved otherwise, so instead the new quest was to find the most expensive item you can purchase at Five Below. Now, I was consistently running into items that were $6 like these headphones and $7 like these tennis rackets, but for the most part, nothing was going beyond this mark until I stumbled on the Five Beyond section, which is apparently the premium section for items above $5. Walking around here was a shock seeing these higher ticket items, and it was here where I found some really expensive items like these Squishmallows for $15 and photo cameras for $20. It didn't stop here though, because since it was Halloween themed, there was a lot of decor that inched prices higher, like these skeletons, which I was surprised to see at $25, and then this other skeleton right next to it for $35. And for a while, that skeleton seemed to be the most expensive item at Five Below, but after taking one more lap around the Beyond section, I found this creepy Halloween witch, which was a whopping $40, thus making it the most expensive item in the store. Five Below, more like 40 below. This video shows what the most visited websites in the world are, so let's see what's at the top. And this may be presumptuous of me, but I have a feeling I'm gonna have to block out a couple of these websites' names. But maybe that's just me projecting. Nope, there you go, there's one. And that's not even the most popular one. I feel like PH, can I say it? I feel like PH is gonna have close to 100 million visitors. And there may be even some other sites I'm forgetting. The top has just gotta be Google, right? I don't think that's what we're looking for here. Google should be up top. Maybe YouTube will be up there. Okay, there's another site. 95 million daily visitors. Oh my gosh. There's some Russian sites. Yeah, there it is. And oh my god, that's even higher than PH. Chinese Google. Google's humongous. Google's got to have close to 1 billion daily visitors. Facebook with 1 billion, YouTube, and then Google with 3 billion. Oh my gosh. Here are the countries that Americans can't visit. So there's currently a do not travel order to North Korea put in place by the Department of State in 2017 following the death of Otto Warmbier. In fact, nobody besides Russians can visit North Korea for tourism as of 2024. Americans are also barred from traveling to Cuba unless it's for a licensed family visit, official government business, journalism, or support of the Cuban people. There's many level 4 advisory countries as defined by the Department of State which may prove difficult to travel to, like Iraq, Lebanon, and Niger for terrorism reasons, and other countries like Yemen, South Sudan, and Afghanistan for civil wars and ongoing internal conflicts. Asia is the continent with the most level 4 countries with 8, including Myanmar and many Middle Eastern countries like Israel and Syria. Africa is a close second though with 8, with countries like Sudan, Somalia, Mali, Libya, and Burkina Faso. Only 4 countries are advised against traveling to in the West, and these are Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. And then finally, the only country in the Americas that has a level 4 advisory on it, which is Venezuela. So be safe. Which fast food has the best dessert? Starting off with Wendy's, which collabed with Cinnabon to have actual cinnamon rolls on their menu for a decent price, and this thing was actually really solid and a surprising win for Wendy's. Taco Bell also serves Cinnabon desserts, but instead of the roll, they have these donut hole-shaped treats with cream inside. After trying these, I did really like them, but I will say not as good as Wendy's. So on to Burger King, which collabed with Hershey on their desserts, and so I tried their classic Hershey pie, which had a chocolate base and frosting, and this was incredible as well, and honestly one of my favorites that I tried. Next I have McDonald's, which is typically known for their pies as desserts, and so I decided to try their blueberry and cream pie. Now, I typically like the apple pies, and I'm happy to report that the blueberry and cream pie was equally good, though I didn't love the cream as much as I did the blueberry. Chick-fil-A serves up cookies and brownies as their dessert, and since I had the cookie many times, I decided to try the brownie, and this was very good, but pretty standard. But the best dessert at a fast food restaurant, surprisingly, actually belonged to KFC, which had this chocolate chip mini cake, which looked like this, and was legitimately one of the best desserts that I've had in the past year. Quite the surprise. I explored an abandoned mall. It was sad. So thanks to Amazon and other online retailers, shopping malls have become a thing of the past, with research suggesting that 80% of malls could close before 2030. And so I went to one of the most notorious dead malls in my area to investigate things further. Now, when I arrived, there were potholes everywhere in the old Sears parking lot and overgrown weeds at the entrance of the mall, indicating no grounds crew maintaining it. But the real shock was when I entered the mall, because it was a complete ghost town with about 80% of the stores abandoned and less than 5 total people walking around. It was really strange seeing places like the children's playground and other mall staples completely abandoned. So there was no activity on the bottom floor, and so I decided to go to the second level, and this is where I found a backrooms door wide open that I was able to walk into, and I saw the entire behind the scenes of the mall. Now, not gonna lie, it felt a bit eerie being the backrooms of a dead and abandoned mall, but it was incredibly cool to get a peek behind the curtain of what happens at these malls. Eventually, though, I exited and I headed towards the food court, where there actually were 3 restaurants remaining alongside of Macy's, which is still their flagship store. But other than that, the mall was completely dead, and I'm sure it's gonna get demolished within the next couple of months. You hate to see it. What is the least ordered item at fast food chains? Starting off with McDonald's, which according to the available data is actually the Filet-O-Fish. fish, and I could see why, because this didn't look too appetizing, but to be honest, it didn't taste too terrible. This is similar to Burger King, whose least popular item is their big fish sandwich that actually tasted much better than the Filet-O-Fish. Chick-fil-A's least popular item is their Cool Wrap, which is actually fire, and Taco Bell's least popular was a 3-cheese chicken flatbread melt, which was basically just a fatter quesadilla, and this was also incredible. On to Wendy's, and their least popular item is their taco salad, which actually comes with an entire side of chili and tastes pretty good, so great value there. Starbucks' least popular food item is these potato, cheddar, and chives bake, which were like little quiches and tasted quite good, while KFC's was surprisingly their chicken pot pie, which I personally love. But definitely the most underrated, least popular item from a fast food chain had to have come from Dunkin' with their white cheddar bagel twist, taking the cake as the best item of the day. So now you know. Who is the best looking YouTuber according to AI? Starting off with Mr. Beast, which I used this picture for AI, and it gave him a 7.5 out of 10, with the weakest score going to his smile and teeth, which I think he actually got veneers recently, so it probably buffed him a bit. Next up was Speed, so I used this picture, and AI notably liked his smile and presence a lot and gave him an 8 out of 10. Ryan Trahan was next, so I used this picture of him, and again, AI liked his smile a lot, and so they ranked him actually slightly higher than Speed at an 8.2. Next up was Brent Rivera, and AI actually gave him an 8.4, leading the pack at this point because of his sharp facial structure and strong hair. Moving on, and Logan Paul was next, and I fed the AI this picture of him, and he got an 8.6 according to AI for his tall face and jawline combined with his friendly smile. Next up was Kai Cenat, and at this point he had scored the highest out of anybody with an 8.8 out of 10 because of his smile, facial structure, and overall presence. But the best looking YouTuber after going through 30 different ones according to AI was actually Nick DiGiovanni, who was given a 9 out of 10 on the conventional attractiveness scale because of his symmetry, bone structure, and polished grooming. Good job, Nick. These are products with really weird age limits. So Roblox is adding a dating feature on its platform for 17-plus-year-olds, despite that age still qualifying as a minor. There's also various games available to 17-year-olds that deal with adult themes. Lego famously has a 4 to 99-year-old age range, which means that once you turn 100, they technically can't sell them to you. Centenarians often joke about this, and Lego sends them custom boxes with no upper age limits. Similarly, some collector editions of Barbie say ages 3 to 97, implying that you lose your Barbie rights at age 98. Ear piercings are technically banned until age 14, but with parental consent, you can actually get them even when you're a baby, while tattoos are typically age 16, but with parental consent can be as young as 14. In certain parts of Germany, you have to be over the age of 18 to buy spray whipped cream as it contains nitrous oxide. This actually might be coming to New York City soon. Many rental car companies and hotels won't allow you to book if you're under the age of 25. And finally, PlayMobile is notably aged 4 to 10, implying that the fun stops at 11, so be careful. This is the hardest arcade game in the world. So I went to Dave & Buster's to play some games and also to try out this Pop the Lock game, which reviews online have stated it to be impossible to beat. It's a precision accuracy game in which you have to time 50 clicks in a row of varying speed on these yellow circles without messing it up, and so I gave it a try. My first attempt was pretty solid as I got it all the way down to just 8 remaining, but I knew that I could go much further, and so I kept trying over and over again, and each time I was getting closer and closer to competing it, but I couldn't get past the last 2. At one point, I even made it down to just 1 remaining, and I lost on the final one, which was very disappointing. And so after about 10 attempts and $25 wasted, I was down to my last attempt before I ran out of money, and that's when this happened. Actually beat it and won the jackpot, and I bought this really cool mug with my tickets. Very cool. Let's try to guess the fast food restaurant by only looking at its outside. I'd say this McDonald's because of the yellow, right? But who even knows with these new storefronts? Okay, good. Definitely Burger King. Color scheme kind of gives it away for them. Cool. Purple's automatically Taco Bell. I can't even think of another store that's purple, right? Yep, good. On a roll here. What the heck is this? Just brick? I genuinely don't know. Must be something like weak branding, like a Papa John's or something maybe. Oh, Subway. Okay. I probably should have got that. That's just got to be KFC, right? Yep, KFC. The coloring gives it away. Dunkin'. Yeah, again, like orange and pink. Who else has that? The unique colors are so specific to them. And then, okay, I think that's Starbucks, right? Yeah, Starbucks. Okay, cool. Perfect. I tried ghost hunting and it was absolutely wild. So I rented out a haunted hotel in New York called the Shanley Hotel and met up with professional ghost hunters to explore the paranormal. Now we started off introducing ourselves to the ghosts by playing cards with them, in which they communicated with me through radio frequencies to try and guess my card, which they actually ended up doing. And so after establishing this line of communication, we headed down to the basement where we met up with ghost children and asked them a few questions before heading into an old burial room where they used to apparently store dead bodies. Once we finished here, I headed into the portal room, which is thought to be the portal between the living and the dead, where ghosts apparently freely enter through. And it was here that I was talking to a 27-year-old ghost named Anna, in which I would ask her questions and get fed answers through frequencies relayed in these headphones. And also, she apparently had a crush on me because she invited me up to her old bedroom where I had to ask her more questions. Up there, I continued looking for more ghost activity and eventually got into Anna's room where I started asking more questions about who else is in the house, and to my surprise, she definitely gave some crazy answers. So is ghost hunting real? I mean, it's up for you to decide, but it was pretty cool though. This town has been on fire for 60 years. It's called Centralia, Pennsylvania, and following a coal mine fire in 1962, forced its residents to move out, seeing its population go from 1,000 people at its height to now just 4 people remaining, effectively making it a ghost town. Now, one of the biggest draws of Centralia is this abandoned road that leads into town called Graffiti Road because of the large amounts of graffiti present, but the government ultimately covered it with dirt mounds a few years ago to deter tourists from visiting. Nonetheless, though, I continued into town and I actually found the last 2 remaining houses within the city limits, even seeing one of the residents outside. There's also a Soul Church that sits atop a hill, but other than that, there's just a fire station for any obvious fires, and cemeteries where the old residents were buried. The entire grid of the old town looks like it's straight out of an apocalypse with overgrown foliage and remains of houses and shops completely torn down now. But definitely the craziest thing about Centralia is that there's literal vents with fire smoke coming out of them because, again, the underground has been on fire for the past 60 years and will continue to be on fire for the next 200 years. Very cool. What does $1 million get you around the world? So in the United States, nearly 20% of all households are millionaires, with $1 million getting you a 4-bedroom house and a few years of middle-class living. In many European countries, though, like Italy, it's rarer to have $1 million, and thus you can access more luxury real estate options like a vineyard farmhouse in Tuscany. In Japan, there's a decent chunk of millionaires, especially with their older median age, and so you would be upper class, but you could likely just own a modest condo in Tokyo. In India, where millionaires only make up 0.02% of the population, you can own a luxury apartment with a sea view and have a driver, cook, and staff for decades with that money. And in South Sudan, which is the poorest country in the world, $1 million would likely make you among the 5 richest people to live there, affording you to build schools, hospitals, or even entire villages. New York City and San Francisco rank amongst the worst in the world for stretching the dollar, and so $1 million just gets you a 1-bedroom apartment in the city. But finally, by far the worst place to have $1 million is in Monaco, which has the most expensive real estate market in the world, in which you get a studio apartment in a random area for $1 million. That's crazy. What is the most amount of food you can order at a drive-thru? So I pulled up to Taco Bell with the goal of ordering as many items as I could until they cut me off and told me I had to come inside, and so I started rattling off menu items, starting off with the value menu and making my way all the way through. Now, since the average drive-thru order consists of just 3 items, I figured I'd get stopped around 15 or 20, but to my surprise, she was completely unfazed and didn't interrupt me a single time, despite the fact that I was literally just reading off the menu board. On the 21st item I ordered, she did interrupt though, and I thought she was going to tell me the order was too large to place at the drive-thru, but she instead just told me that they were out of this limited time purple Baja Blast. And so I continued ordering until I quite literally ordered every single Taco Bell menu item, which, if you're wondering, was $112.20 for 33 items. She told me to pull around, and I was really expecting her at this point to tell me to come inside, which would semi-defeat the goal, but even crazier, they actually delivered it to me all in one giant bag in less than 5 total minutes. So I guess the answer's unlimited, and shout out to Taco Bell. These are influencers turned killers. So Mehek Bukhari was a TikToker from the UK with hundreds of thousands of followers who, alongside her mom, murdered 2 men to help hide her mom's affair. They were both sentenced to life in prison. Sin City Manny, a Las Vegas YouTuber, was accused of killing 2 other content creators if they got into beef with him in his live stream chat, and so he pulled up on them in front of a casino to confront them and kill them. He's currently awaiting trial and may actually face the death penalty. A TikToker named Zachary Latham fatally stabbed his neighbor, in which he regularly got into disputes with, and he leveraged it all for content, though he has recently been released after it was ruled that he acted on self-defense. An OF model named Abigail White from the UK was found to have stabbed her boyfriend to death in 2022 after an argument in which they broke up, while another OF model named Kelsey Turner murdered her 71-year-old psychiatrist with a baseball bat after he refused to bring her sugar daddy payments. And finally, an Australian influencer named Andre Rebello killed his mom to claim her $1 million life insurance policy in order to pay down debt that him and his wife had incurred. That's crazy. How many patties can you order on a single burger? So many fast food spots apparently have limits set in place for maximum patties, like In-N-Out and McDonald's, which only allow 4, or Five Guys, which is rumored to max out at 8 patties. Wendy's, though, notably has a secret menu item called the T-Rex burger that comes with up to 10 patties, so I knew this was the spot to set the record. I pulled up to Wendy's and I decided to order a Dave's Triple as my base, which already has 3 of their patties atop it already, and then I proceeded to ask for 8 additional patties to go on top of it to get me to 11, and to my surprise, they were actually cool with it and they were down to make the burger. When I pulled up to the window, they were very excited to make this, and I ended up adding cheese on it as well for the full visual, and I paid my $32 and waited about 5 minutes for this monstrosity to be handed to me. And when I got this bag, it was no less than 5 pounds, and I pulled over to see what an 11 patty burger actually looked like, and when I opened it up, this is what I saw. 11 patties and everything. I actually got it, and now it was time for the taste test, and I was only able to bite 4 burgers at a time, but it was very good. So I think 11 patties is the actual limit, but I would not test it any further. These are people whose identities are a complete mystery. So Banksy, the world's most famous graffiti artist, is completely anonymous, with nobody to this day having an idea of who he or she could be. Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, has never revealed his identity, and he's currently sitting on 1.1 million Bitcoin, which is equivalent to $100 billion, making him the 12th richest man in the world. In the late 1800s, there was a man dubbed Leatherman who wore a 60-pound leather suit and walked from Connecticut to New York every single year in the same exact path in the same amount of time until his death. Rasputin was a Russian mystic who became an advisor to the Tsar family, but many people believe he had superpowers because not only could he heal people, but when they tried to kill him, they poisoned, shot him multiple times, and beat him, and he wouldn't die until they ultimately drowned him and trapped him underwater. The creator of the Voynich manuscript, a strange book from the 1400s that nobody's ever been able to read, was never identified, meaning this entire book can never be read in the history of time. And finally, on the internet side of things, Corpse Husband, How to Basic, and You Suck at Cooking all continue to remain a mystery as they've never face revealed and likely never will. Pretty cool, right? Who is the worst actor ever? Well, the actor with the most Razzie Awards, which is the opposite of the Oscars, is Sylvester Stallone with 16 Worst Actor nominations, followed by Adam Sandler with 12, but considering some of their films' commercial successes, they couldn't be considered the actual worst. And so, commercially speaking, if we look at the actors with the lowest return on investment, that would be Adam Driver and Dolph Lundgren in the mix, who have been in multiple movies with historical box office losses, but even so, they have a good amount of highly favored movies. Which means another category to assess is just average online movie rating for actors, and in this case, we find that Stephen Dorff is considerably the worst at a 4.66 average movie rating. But with all that said, Yahoo Movies actually did an aggregated version in which they considered all three categories, and what they found is that the top 5 worst actors were as follows: Steven Seagal in 5th, Megan Fox in 4th, Sharon Stone in 3rd, Kim Basinger in 2nd, and then the worst actor of all time by a pretty long shot scientifically is Madonna. Pretty cool, right? How much free bread can you get at a restaurant? So Olive Garden famously advertises their endless free breadsticks for all patrons, and so I wanted to push that to its limit, so I got 2 friends over to the restaurant so we could start to carb up. They start you off with 6 breadsticks, which we ate in the matter of minutes, and they didn't actually refill our first breadsticks until we got our appetizers about 10 minutes later, and upon receiving that, we quickly took it down, now waiting for our third. Now, they wouldn't naturally fill it up at this point, so we had to ask for it, and eventually we did get 6 more breadsticks. While trying to procure the next 6 breadsticks, we actually got pushback from our waiter claiming they were running low on breadsticks and couldn't get them to us right now, which I figured was just code for stop ordering them, but luckily 5 minutes later, he actually brought us 7 breadsticks. At this point, we had 25 breadsticks served to us, and we were starting to reach our capacity, but we wanted one more final refill before we left, so I asked the waiter for one more, half expecting him to say no, and luckily, he actually ended up giving us 10 for the final one, which brought our total to 35 breadsticks for 3 people, which means that about 12 breadsticks per person seems to be the limit before the kitchen cuts you off. So now you know. What is the most boring job in the world? So starting off positively, the most exciting jobs in the world consistently rank to be storm chasers, travel photographers or vloggers, and astronauts in that order, with the key component of all three notably being exploration and the thrill of the unknown, though the best jobs actually tend to be a bit different, instead being software developers for their flexibility and high pay, teachers for their deep fulfillment gained, and content creators for their freedom and high pay scale. The worst jobs in the world regularly rank to be sewer divers, coal miners, and slaughterhouse workers, as they have a high physical and psychological toll on people. But finally, the most boring job you can have, according to studies conducted by the University of Essex in 2022, was security guards in 5th because of the long hours of minimal stimulation, banking in 4th because of the rigid structure, janitorial work in 3rd because of repetitive tasks and no variety, accounting in 2nd because of endless forms, numbers, and compliance, and in 1st place for the most boring job, we have data analysis because of its repetitive nature, predictability, and long hours staring at screens. Hopefully if you do any of these though, you love your job. Who owns the most land in the world? So excluding governments like Russia, the United States, and Canada that technically own their public land and are the 3 largest countries, there are some individuals who own crazy amounts, like the Emerson family in the US who owns about 2.3 million acres for their timber business, or Ted Turner, the CNN founder, who owns about 2.5 million acres across the United States. The largest individual landowner would be Gina Rinehart, an Australian mining magnate who owns 23 million acres in Australia, which is the 3rd most in total, with the 2nd largest landowner being the Catholic Church or the Vatican, that is estimated to own about 177 million acres spread across churches, schools, and farms across the globe. But by far, the largest landowner in the world is actually King Charles III and the British Crown, which is technically the legal owner of over 6.6 billion acres of land, which is the equivalent of 1/6 of the Earth's surface, because he and the Crown technically own large percentages of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and parts of the Caribbean and Africa through Commonwealth realms. That's crazy. How much caffeine can you get in a single drink at Starbucks? So the daily recommended upper limit of caffeine for adults is 400 milligrams, and it begins to get dangerous once you go over 1,000 milligrams, and so ultimately I wanted to see if Starbucks would actually serve me a dangerously caffeinated drink. I started off with a Trenta cold brew as my base, which according to their website is 360 milligrams, and then the fun began because I wanted to add as many espresso shots that they'd allowed me to put in, because each shot was 75 milligrams of caffeine. To my surprise, they were complying with my request, and I was ultimately able to get 15 shots of espresso in my 30-ounce cold brew coffee, which meant I was about to receive a drink with nearly 1,500 milligrams of caffeine. They actually requested that I go inside to pick it up, which I thought was interesting, but nonetheless, I went inside to retrieve it, and this was literally the darkest drink I've ever seen. Now, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I did, of course, have to take a sip of this to try it, and interestingly, one sip of this coffee that I created was was actually equal to a small coffee, and so I went ahead and sipped it, and it was incredibly bitter. And from just a single sip, which was 60 milligrams of caffeine, I was definitely wired for the rest of the day. Definitely don't try this. These are crazy things that we found in space. So astronomers discovered an exoplanet called 55 Cancri E, which is twice Earth's size and made of mostly carbon, which means it's a planet made of diamonds, while another exoplanet named HD 189733b has 4,000 mile per hour winds that whip shards of glass sideways across the skies constantly. Astronomers found a gigantic water cloud 12 billion light years away that holds 140 trillion times more water than in Earth's oceans, and they also found an alcohol cloud that's large enough to produce 400 trillion pints of beer. We recently discovered a zombie star that refuses to die despite exploding multiple times, defying what we know about physics. Also strange to observe is on Saturn's North Pole, which has a perfect hexagonal storm thousands of miles wide, spinning for decades straight with endless energy. NASA discovered a hand-shaped nebula stretching across 150 light years that looks like the hand of God extending across galaxies. And finally, there was a void discovered called the Great Nothing that should by all accounts and physical estimations have over 2,000 galaxies in it, but it only has 60, making it statistically impossible to exist. Pretty cool, right? Can you get every single topping on a Subway sandwich? So Subway claims to have no official limit on the number of toppings you can put on your sandwich, provided the sandwich artist can close the sandwich. Luckily, the employee that I got was a seasoned veteran and excited for the challenge, so he agreed to do it and we began stacking up. Now, as he was going through, I was really curious what this would end up looking like because he was stacking every meat, including tuna, on top of every cheese, and it was starting to take form. After he finished the meat and cheese, this is what it looked like, and I asked him to toast it, of course, before then loading it up with every veggie topping and sauce as well. At the end of it, this is what it looked like, and I was really impressed he was able to actually close this all on a single sandwich, and even more impressed, it only cost me about $30 to get everything. I also ordered a cookie and a Diet Coke to be healthy, and then I sat down ready to see what this monstrosity would taste like. And I have to say, it ended up being surprisingly enjoyable. So you actually can get every single topping, and I'd give it a 7 out of 10. How many times have they died? So 20 seasons, he probably dies like once a season in like a cutaway gag. Maybe like 20 or so. 40, nice, okay. The logic was there. Mario is literally infinite with all those video game deaths. I don't know what the number would be. Probably like a billion? 100 billion. Wow, what a fate. I don't know if SpongeBob regularly dies in this show. At least not the old seasons. Maybe like 3 or 4 or something just to cover my bases though. 20? Really? Must be the newer seasons, okay. I don't really know the Superman lore. I'm sure he's died at some point though. Probably in like the universe or comic, right? Maybe like 3? 14. Wow, okay. Yeah, I don't know him enough, honestly. Shrek? I feel like there's not enough IP out there to have Shrek die. It's just like his 4 movies, right? And he doesn't die, so 0. Cool. Okay, there we go, Shrek. And Spider-Man? Maybe similar to Superman. He'll probably have like a dozen deaths or so across everything, especially for kind of like what-if scenarios. 16. All right, perfect. There we go. These are predictions from 100 years ago, so let's see what actually came true. So by 2025, about 30% of people believe we would have flying cars and personal aircraft for families, and another 30% thought we'd have conveyor streets or moving sidewalks in major cities, similar to the walking accelerators at airports. 50% of people believe that by 2025, meals would come in pill form, as this was pushed by major newspapers at the time as something inevitably coming down the pipeline for weight loss management. Robot maids or some sort of automated housekeeping were expected by about 40% of futurists, and wireless news was also predicted by that same cohort to revolutionize the paper reliance. 2-hour workdays or complete machine automation was expected by many by 2025, as was a complete end to poverty and war thanks to post-World War I optimism. Life expectancy was expected to increase to 120 in line with compounding growth in medicine, and artificial organs were discussed as a reasonable medical breakthrough by the year 2025. And finally, the most common prediction by people though was that in 2025 we'd have a universal language that allows anybody to speak to one another. Not bad for 100 years ago. What happens every 1 second on Earth? So every second 4 babies are born and 2 people die, which means we net gain 2 people, and surprisingly have about 2.5 million born every second. Lightning strikes Earth 100 times per second, and 1,000 stars explode into supernovas. Every second the universe expands by 75 kilometers, and the Andromeda galaxy approaches us 68 miles per second, though we won't crash into it for another 4.5 billion years, so you're good. Every second there are 4 million emails sent, 3 million text messages, and about 10,000 new tweets. Every second Elon Musk makes $3,000, while Walmart and Amazon make about $20,000. The national debt increases by $50,000. Every second 23,000 cups of coffee, 25,000 Coca-Colas, and 12,000 pints of beer are drank to go along with 100 McDonald's burgers, 400 slices of pizza, and 1,500 chocolate bars. And finally, every second there are about 60,000 YouTube videos watched, so I'm glad you're watching this one. What does the average person actually look like? Well, I asked AI to find out. So the average white male in the United States is 37 years old, 5'9", and 200 pounds. Depending on which AI model you ask, he either looks like this or this. For the average white female, she's 40 years old, 5'3", and weighs 170 pounds. Again, either looking like this or this, depending on who you ask. If you're looking for the average kid in America, they'll either look like this for a boy or this for a girl. Interestingly though, the average American is projected to look like this in about 20 years thanks to interracial reproduction. The average man, woman, boy, and girl girl in China looks like this, while the average man, woman, boy, and girl in India look like this, which together make up about 40% of the world. And while all the people I showed are country specific, the most average person in the world, considering all countries and demographics, is generated by AI to look like this. So if this happens to look like you, you're unfortunately not special at all. Pretty cool. These are the most unethical science experiments in history. So the Tuskegee syphilis study in the mid-1900s involved researchers hiding the fact that participants had syphilis and withheld necessary medicine from them. Similarly, the Willowbrook State School purposely infected intellectually disabled children with hepatitis in exchange for admission to their school. Project MK Ultra was a CIA program that involved illegally administering psychoactive drugs on non-consenting citizens so that we could study the long-term effects of them. Worse than this was during the Cold War, when the US would experiment with exposing pregnant women and hospitalized patients to radiation without their knowledge. The San Antonio contraceptive study gave 76 Mexican women oral contraceptive, only later to tell them that half of them were placebo, thus deceiving into half of them getting pregnant. And finally, United 731 during World War II involved the Japanese conducting experiments on subjects, including, but not limited to, intentional infection of deadly diseases, exposure to extreme cold to induce frostbite, and surgery without anesthesia to see the results. That's terrible. What is the most hated fast food item? Starting off with Taco Bell, with customers agreeing that the veggie Mexican pizza is the worst, and I have to agree because every time I eat this thing, I want to immediately regurgitate it. At KFC, people reportedly dislike the coleslaw, but coleslaw is a pretty easy target, and while it wasn't amazing, I don't think it deserves the dislike around it. I don't know who's ordering this, but the gyro at Arby's is generally disliked online, but to my genuine surprise, this actually slapped, like a true 8 out of 10, which is crazy for an Arby's Greek item. At Dunkin', the least favorite was this Cream Delight donut that was filled with buttercream, and I have no idea why, because upon trying it, it was one of my favorites. Burger King's is predictably the Impossible Whopper, which is a vegan patty, although I don't really dislike it, while McDonald's is predictably the Filet-O-Fish, and so I got a double one to see how bad it was, and it was predictably double mid. But then on to Popeyes, because their most disliked item is actually one of their newer items, which is the Caramel Apple Cheesecake Cup, which looked pretty decent, but ended up tasting arguably worse than the Mexican pizza. So I would avoid these. These are some Wikipedia world records. So the most visited Wikipedia page outside of the main page is actually YouTube by a long shot, with over 40 million visits per year, and the most viewed Wikipedia article in a single day is Charlie Kirk, with 15 million views on September 10th following the news of his death. The longest article ever is List of Subnational Entities by Human Development Index, which was over 2 million bytes, though recently it's been chopped up, so now it's List of Cases of the January 6th United States Capitol attack, which is just over 800,000 bytes. The first article ever on Wikipedia was Afghanistan with a capital N on January 16th, 2001, and the longest article has been alive without an edit was Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, which has had no edits for over 23 years. The most edited page on Wikipedia is List of WWE personnel. Not counting list, though, is the United States with over 51,000 edits. And finally, the article with the most references is oddly 1559 to 1562 French political crisis with over 1,200 unique citations. Pretty cool, right? This video will have a jump scare at some point. I don't want to tell you when. It could literally happen at quite literally any point. So it could happen right now. It could happen right now. You don't know. But if you do wait long enough, I promise you will see a jump scare. Legit could happen at any given point. So I don't want to ruin anything. It's not going to come out of nowhere, by the way. It's just going to pop up on screen any second. And I'm going to do it, like I promise. You're not just going to watch this video and nothing's going to happen. There is going to be a jump scare at some point. Thought it froze or something? Nope, we're still waiting. No, I'm just kidding. There's not going to be a jump scare. You're good. I would not do that to you, but I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Goodbye. This video will have a jump scare at some point. I don't want to tell you when. It could literally happen at... I told you it was coming. I'm sorry. What is the most expensive book in a bookstore? So I went to Barnes & Noble to answer this question and started off in the manga and comic book section, where I found a Dragon Ball manga for $25, which was the top for a few minutes before stumbling on the Marvel Encyclopedia for $45. From there, I looked around at the banned book section and the religious section in hopes of striking gold, but I couldn't find anything to beat the $45. I figured I'd start looking at toys and collectibles next, so I was scanning Funko Pops and Lego sets, and it was here that I found a $160 Lego Wicked set. I continued searching in other sections, but couldn't find anything that even broke $100, let alone $160, until I stumbled on the study section, in which I figured I could get complete volumes of medical literature for pretty expensive. And that's precisely when I stumbled across this MCAT study plan that was $240, which ended up being the most expensive book in the store. However, as I was leaving, I came across this record player on the floor that came in at a whopping $350, making that officially the most expensive item in a bookstore. So now you know. These are living relatives of historical people. So Abraham Lincoln has a relative still alive named Ralph Lincoln, who's actually a professional Abraham Lincoln impersonator impersonator and historical reenactor. Napoleon's main descendant is a French investment banker who studied at Harvard and, funnily enough, is currently a rival of the Duke of Wellington's descendant who also works in finance at a competing bank, deepening the 200-year rivalry, though significantly less interesting. Hitler has 3 great-nephews that live in New York, with 2 of them running a landscaping business in Long Island and the other being a retired pharmacist. The descendants of Cornelius Vanderbilt, the railroad and steamship monopolist worth $2 billion at one point, blew all of his money, and as of the 1970s, apparently not a single millionaire even remains in the family. The author Charles Dickens has a great-great-grandson named Harry Lloyd, who actually had a role in Game of Thrones, and Thomas Jefferson has a great-great-grandson who's a TV anchor in Houston. And finally, John Tyler, America's 10th president, born in 1790, had a living grandson who was actually alive for Skibidi Toilet and Italian brain rot before ultimately dying earlier this year in May. So rest in peace. I visited America's failed city. So Atlantic City, New Jersey was supposed to be the Las Vegas of the East Coast, complete with dozens of hotels and casinos and tens of billions of dollars in investment. But recently, they've seen a drastic fall in tourism and iconic buildings regularly being abandoned and demolished. And so, I had to check it out. Upon arriving, I was shocked to see that literally nobody was on the boardwalk or beach, despite it being early September, and all of the surrounding areas seemed to be closed, like this mall, which was an absolute ghost town. Afterwards, I walked around the casinos, which were the main draw of Atlantic City, and most of them weren't even open, and the ones that were definitely weren't too crowded. The amusement park was closed, despite it claiming to be open on Google Maps, and many of the restaurants along the pier were shut down as well, leading me to have to eat at a Rainforest Cafe and a Hooters. In addition to this, everything that was open was really expensive, like Starbucks, which had a $7 iced tea, and this aquarium that charges you $15 to see 5 fish tanks. And so overall, I could see why the city was failing, because it felt more like a seasonal beach town than a billion-dollar tourism city. You hate to see it.
কি হইছে বলতো? আর বলিস না, তোরে যে বুকিং দিছে সে তখন আমার পিছনে লাগছে।
দিশান ও দরজা লাগিয়ে দিতে আমার দরজা লাগিয়ে দিতে কই যায় কই যা
আমরা তো বিয়েই দিয়ে দিবে বাসা থেকে।
মাম্মা লাভ স্টোরি তো শুরু করে দিলা ভালো 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 মালটারে কি পড়ানো যায়
তুই একটা কাম কর আজকে থেকে আমি তোমার তুমি আমার ব্যাস ডিসিশন ফাইনাল বুকিং দিয়ে রাখলাম ঠিক আছে কি খবর তোমাদের কেমন আছো তোমরা সবাই ভালো তো না তুমি জানো তোমার কালকে তো কতবার বলছি
হ্যালো আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম
কি রে এদার তুইন মানা করতেছি
কিছু না কিছু ভাবি আপনি জানেন আমি একবার অসুস্থ হয়ে গেছিলাম ও আমাকে রক্ত দেয়নি আর আজকে আপনাকে রক্ত দিয়ে চিঠি লিখছে
I visited America's failed city. So Atlantic City, New Jersey was supposed to be the Las Vegas of the East Coast, complete with dozens of hotels and casinos and tens of billions of dollars in investment. But recently, they've seen a drastic fall in tourism and iconic buildings regularly being abandoned and demolished. And so, I had to check it out. Upon arriving, I was shocked to see that literally nobody was on the boardwalk or beach, despite it being early September, and all of the surrounding areas seemed to be closed, like this mall, which was an absolute ghost town. Afterwards, I walked around the casinos, which were the main draw of Atlantic City, and most of them weren't even open, and the ones that were definitely weren't too crowded. The amusement park was closed, despite it claiming to be open on Google Maps, and many of the restaurants along the pier were shut down as well, leading me to have to eat at a Rainforest Cafe and a Hooters. In addition to this, everything that was open was really expensive, like Starbucks, which had a $7 iced tea, and this aquarium that charges you $15 to see 5 fish tanks. And so overall, I could see why the city was failing, because it felt more like a seasonal beach town than a billion-dollar tourism city. You hate to see it.